Welcome to the Books to Business podcast, Season 3, Episode 1, new location, new book, new everything.
Yeah, everything's lost. We moved into our new studio. We couldn't find the book. So this is going to be a quick podcast, but we're doing Talking to Strangers. What we should know about the people we don't know. And I love it.
What was your what was your gut instinct? What was your first impression once you finished? Was it what you expected?
No.
Me neither.
I didn't really understand the title that much. I knew, Talking to Strangers is something I've done a lot in my life. So I thought it might be about how to better communicate with strangers, but I don't think it has anything to do with communication. I think it's more to do with perception.
Right.
And how you perceive someone and how we're almost always wrong about it.
Yeah.
Which I'm very good at. I'm very
Detecting?
good at being wrong.
Oh.
Yeah, very good at being wrong about something.
Hard on yourself.
No, I got track marks on my head.
I loved the stories. I thought the stories were great. Particularly because this is a books to business podcast. My thought as I'm reading is always like, okay, well, what are the pieces that I can take out and we can give to the folks pertaining to their business? And the string tying this together was a little different, a little convoluted. But there were still some great things, and I think some things that we can talk about with regard to, how we interact, how we judge each other, or maybe not pick things up when we should, right. How humans default to truth, basic concepts. Yeah,
we're still gullible. We're still a gullible species. I think we want to believe somebody is who they say they are. And there's so many instances where that's not true, especially in the stories that he talks about in his book. There's some great stories that kind of reminded me of like Amanda Knox and there's all kinds of cool stories about spies and how judges are always wrong. It's like one to the next is like all these great stories.
Yeah, let's start with the judges one because I feel like that tees everything up nicely.
Yeah, especially when we're so adamant that algorithms are amazing and artificial intelligence is going to disrupt and we need to get ahead of it. There was a mathematician that fed half a million convictions and judicial sentencing into an algorithm that gave the algorithm, the computer, the exact data that the judges had.
Yeah.
And the judges were 25% more likely to make a bad decision on who would be a recidivist, right. Which means a repeat offender. The algorithm was better by 25%.
Which is amazing. And the crazy thing is the judges had more information, right? So the deal is the judges are looking at people, after they've been, starts with an A, when you get arraigned, and he's setting bail, right. Or she. All right. They have a lot of information. The computer with the same people, right, has basic information on the folks. And so the judge decides yes or no, did they get bail? Same thing with the computer. The computer looks at the person based on very essential data, goes, maybe not. And what it turned out, to Terrence's point, 25%, the computer was 25% better at choosing people that would not commit a crime when they were on bail. So that means the judges would grant bail to people that they shouldn't or that were high-risk offenders because they're looking at them and they're seeing their smile and they're seeing how they're talking and all this information that's not pertinent, but helps the judge come to this conclusion that, you know what? I think they're safe. I think we can put them back out into society, which is just terrifying.
They're getting worked.
Yeah.
The good news that you don't know what the word arraignment means. I do.
Yeah, I worked for a district attorney for a while.
Oh, you did? Steve, you ever been arraigned on a criminal charge?
I have not yet.
What about the controversial playground activity that you have when you're drinking?
I mean, they should have got me there, but
just clarify that's a joke. Damn it!
Well, you got to listen to the other podcast.
There's a joke way back for anyone that's picking that up and turning off the podcast.
Well, Steve goes to playgrounds and he jumps and dunks his basketball and then turns the video cameras on. So one day we're in a foreign country. He goes,
even that's creepy.
We need to find a playground, and that's where the joke came from. He wanted to go play basketball. Completely innocent, but the workings of the interaction when you see someone physically. I mean, the dynamic here, which I think is interesting, is if the judges didn't see the people's reaction. like the smiles and
Well, the computer didn't see it.
Yeah, no. If the judges didn't, it would be interesting
Oh.
whether or not they would have released some of the people. Because on paper, some people look like absolute hell,
Right.
and in person, they could look they're very innocent. If you look at like the serial killers, that like who's the guy that ate everybody? Dahmer.
Oh,
He
my
looked like
God.
a pretty unassuming dude.
Yeah.
and you keep seeing all these instances.
Ted Bundy. It's
Yeah,
like-
yeah, good looking guy.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that's and I think that translates into observations you make in life. Meeting new people, neighbors, meeting people to date, meeting people to interview. For business owners trying to build team members.
Right.
Like, I
how
think
we
that-
doing it other?
You're almost better off not interviewing according to this algorithm.
I know. Just
the
have a computer
faces-
put in the info.
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
Right.
It was very surprising that basically were alluding to the fact that if you don't meet someone, you'll make a more accurate judgment based upon the data.
It clashes with a lot of what we've read in a million books with regard to leadership and character and understanding. I mean, and by the way, this book's not saying throw it out. It's just making the point that we're terrible at assessing other people.
Right, strangers, people
Yeah.
we don't know. We're making these judgment calls based upon a look someone has on their face or how they handle confrontation. It's like two different people. Sometimes people that don't handle confrontation well are nice people that don't get confronted very frequently.
Right.
That was one of the reasons Amanda Knox, the Italian murder case, that she didn't handle the accusation. She wasn't like screaming out to say, "I didn't do this. What are you, crazy?"
Right.
She got a little weird because I think she was so surprised that she was being accused. She didn't understand how to react.
Yeah, she had a mismatched personality.
That's it.
So she wasn't grieving, and people looked at her because she was wrongfully accused,
Right.
and so or so it goes, right. But so people would look at her and see her behavior and think like, traditionally, someone who cares that their friend dies doesn't act like this, and so people really painted her in a bad light, and she's what Gladwell calls a mismatched personality, where how she is and how she acts, they're two different things. Like Bernie Madoff,
Oh God! Yeah.
right? Like a very, he talks about him, a very, charismatic, good-natured guy, seems like just a great person, and he's a monster.
Yeah.
And they're the scariest because you can't read someone like that.
Because you want to believe it's true. I mean, think about it. He was in the most highly regulated industry. He's in my industry. He did it differently, but we dealt with securities, and securities is incredibly regulated. So he was basically making up returns that were against all reasonable performance that was his contemporaries were getting. And every time he was investigated, because there are instances where people are like, how's he doing this? They would just, when they got close to getting the answer right, they would just stop because they would say, oh, well, someone else surely would have gotten him. Probably is a savant, or he said his excuse was, Bernie Madoff's excuse was that he could see around the corner. Because he got out at the right time, like he would have gotten out a month ago. But the reality was there was nothing in there anyway.
What was he doing? Was he insider trading?
No, it was a Ponzi scheme. So he was taking money as an investor. He would produce these fake reports. Like, I've gotten 15% when everybody else got 9%. And when everybody else lost 20, he'd go up 3%. So he was literally pulling it out of thin air. It was a complete fabrication. So in a Ponzi scheme, I think it started out with, he got good returns, and then he needed to raise more money, so he started making up returns, probably in the hope that he'd ultimately make those returns. Never did. So now he had to continue chasing a lie. You make one lie, you got to do a bigger lie to cover up the first lie. That's what he did with investment returns.
Okay.
And the regulators would have caught him probably at some point because people asked for money to get back, and the money was all gone. He had spent it. There was on their statement they'd say, you have $1 million, and they said, well, send me 100,000. He didn't even have that.
And the idea was the perception was he was too big of a fish to
Right.
to be doing anything illegal like that. Surely someone would have snagged them.
I love the guy that caught him. His name was Markarpolips.
Oh,
Harry
something like that.
Markarpolips. He was a white crime fraud investigator, independent. And he ended up being like a legitimate skeptic. He'd never want to be his friend. Like, he doesn't believe anybody. And because his dad had a restaurant growing up. But everyone ripped him off. You know, they stealing shit out the back door and giving food away. Like, I've seen that movie. And so he finally, he tried on 3 occasions to send information that this guy's wrong. This guy's not, there's no way he's doing it right. And ultimately, they got him.
Yeah, he tried to. There's a pretty cool story in the book. He tried to. Well, actually, he regrets doing it, but he had information, some numbers on Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
And remember, he put on like a coat.
They thought they were going to kill him, right?
Yeah. And he goes up and he puts it in a brown envelope and slips it to someone and ended up never getting. I think it was the DA. But
Elliot
I don't
Spitzer.
Remember? It was.
Yeah, he went to Boston when Elliot Spitzer was the speaker, and he was going to hand in.
Yeah.
The proof that Bernie Madoff was taking people. You know, the company I worked with was one of the top. You know, they had money in the hedge fund. They lost $3 billion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we couldn't talk to reporters whenever it was a big thing. Like they were like the number one. Kevin Bacon was taken. There was a lot of really high end people. Is he dead, Steve?
Who?
Bernie Madoff?
Oh,
I can't remember. Yeah, he's dead, right?
Killed himself in jail.
Oh, I don't know.
And it's been tragic. His kid
And also,
killed himself, and I think it
did he turn himself in? That's what I was.
He did after they knew they had him. You know,
all right.
Yeah, I think they knew they had him. But you default to truth is the point. Like talking to strangers, if you don't know them and you don't have the data, we always believe people, and people like this are the ones you want to believe, and I think you have to want to believe them to have society.
Right.
Because you imagine going to the store and everybody not believing the cash register and taking an extra 10 minutes to get out the door, especially now.
You got to trust that the cashier's giving you your change right. Otherwise, your life will be hell. You know, and that's kind of the point he makes. It's like we start with truth, and it takes proof and evidence overwhelming before, he mentions like a spouse suspecting her husband's cheating. You know, at the beginning, it's like he says no, and it's like, oh, okay, he's a good guy. But then it's, the hotels, and then you start putting the pieces together, and, you never default with that.
What do you think does that now, friends that got, disloyal to their spouses and got caught and they're thrown out. Pretty soon they're not living at home, and you say, like, what happened? And they're like, oh, they found my cell phone, right? Because a pattern occurs. It's always starts with like staying out or going the same place or having a legitimate excuse not to be home.
Playgrounds.
And at what point do you collect the, snag the phone at night?
Yeah.
And that's when it's only when it's there, like obvious, that they'll finally not believe that, oh, we're just friends or we're just working. It's like clear to everybody else except the person it's happening to.
That's so funny. It makes it funnier. I forget what town. There's I drove by a gentleman's club once in Boston called The Office, and I'm like, that's the most clever thing I've ever heard.
Called The Office?
Yeah, you just, like, people say they're going to the office.
So it's on the credit card statement.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. The Office.
It was a place in Central Florida where I went to college. The bar was called the Library. It was called like the Knights Library.
The library.
Same thing. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, they want to believe. Where were you? I was at the library.
Exactly.
Well, now I'm going to get in trouble for going to the library?
Was at the library a long time, then went back to the office at night.
You ever see the joke that's out there now? It's running around YouTube or whatever. I don't know, videos. The guy comes in, he's talking live. He goes, I can't take it anymore. My wife's out every night. She just never home. She's always out looking around, doing her thing. The guy goes, what's she doing? He goes, what's she doing? She's looking for me.
Oh, yeah.
He has to get rid of it. But defaulting to truth is a big deal. I mean, we talked about eBay before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How when eBay was an idea that somebody monetized, they had this, exchange, I guess, right? Whatever it's called. You could put something online. There's a place you can go bid on it, an auction. And they were worried that the auctions would be, one end of the bargain would screw it up.
Right.
And they created another industry of these transfer agents. These brokers would hold the money until everything hit. And the reality was they didn't need it. Because even though we're not good at assessing strangers, most people, for the most part, like there's only one Bernie Madoff story. Most people are honest.
Right.
Most, like 99.8%.
Which is why we struggle.
Right.
It makes sense that we default, you know?
It's free. Well, the gullibility, it makes the con artist run free.
Yeah.
You know, there's another story about a DIA agent, a spy. They called her the Cuban queen. Her name was Ana Costes.
Montez, I think.
Ana Montez, that's it. And she was like, you know, in Cuba, so obvious to everybody, and nobody ever, you know, it was obvious in pieces, but it was never put together like that's obviously the spy.
Right.
That was one of the biggest things. But everyone wanted to believe she was a, you know, quiet young girl.
And by the way, these are the best people in the world at this.
Yeah, Castro.
Castro. Yeah, well, I just meant the agency.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
yeah.
at being discreet and understanding like
Right.
what's going on, being very cognizant and aware.
Right.
And you have someone higher up working for Castro.
Right.
And you have a bunch of Cuban double agents sprinkled all throughout the agency. It's really interesting.
Yeah, he hired actors. Castro hired like theatrical actors as
right.
spies. He
That's
recruited them. And that was apparently relatively easy too. You would think being a spy is a big deal, but apparently he is quite successful at hiring these spies, and these spies were just duping everybody.
Right.
In compliance, in the old world I was in, it's called compliance when they oversee trades. And there's a guy that I loved. He retired a couple years ago. His name was Ken. And at the end of every meeting, he always says, "Now remember, make sure you have a healthy dose of skepticism
Right.
when you go about your day." And I never forgot that because I'm pretty damn gullible.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I keep getting taken.
Yeah.
You know, I want to believe people, but you know what? If you believe a lot of people and they can solve your problem, most of the time you'll be right.
Yeah. And that ties in, like he talks about our ability to do that, our desire to do that, how society tends to punish it because we don't understand it. And like that may be the best takeaway from this book. It's like understanding. So like, for example, and this was a tough chapter, but he talked about Sandusky. And it was awful to read, but basically, like, you know, it talks about this guy who's just so beloved and everybody loves him, and you know, people love the football team, and these atrocious things are going on, and a couple higher ups, I forget if it's the athletic director, or I kind of just move these details out, but they actually did time,
right,
for not reporting him, and they're like, we didn't see it. Like I didn't believe that was, I believed him.
right.
And he's saying like, it's very, very plausible that that's the truth because human beings default there. And so one of the things that we can do as a society is understand that people are defaulting to truth, understand it's our biological tendency and not punish people for it. Yeah. I'm sure there's a counter argument to that. I don't know all the details of the case, but you know, he's giving one side to the story. And from that perspective, it makes sense, you know. Yeah. I can see these people being just blown away and bewildered by the whole thing.
I was proud of you today in our earlier call because every time we use books, I see you implement things. So we had a call with a vendor, right? Instead of like saying a good reputable vendor comes from all the right references, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. You know, my default is let's give it a try. Big mistake, little mistake, right? The big mistake is this was the right person. We didn't hire him. The little mistake was we ask a few more questions and make sure they're the right person. So Eddie vetted him a lot more.
I grilled the guy.
And I think it was because you just read this book.
Could be.
So if you're interviewing someone that's important to you, you know, in life or business, and you know who they are, maybe you just don't take everything so perfectly honest.
Right.
Maybe there's also interpretation. Like people dream up these what do you call them? Fictional realities. They're not necessarily real.
Right.
You know, they're living in this fantasy land. They're not who they are. You got to trust but verify.
And believe what you want to believe, you know. For me, it was, and we probably shouldn't dive into this too much, but the details and the nuance, like when you can tell when someone has captured a niche and they truly understand it, versus the buzzwords like let's get people excited, let's get an emotional response. That makes me think like,
let's take it to another level.
Yeah,
let's ramp up.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Ramp up.
Another. I
hate that
thought you were telling me to ramp up.
I was like, no,
what,
it's like
dude?
someone says, we got to ramp up the ads. We got to ramp up this. So many people are full of it.
Oh my god.
Pretenders, and you get influencers. There's a lot of we've done events and joint marketing ventures with people that can't deliver on what they pretend they say they can.
Yeah,
and some do, but not always. I'm always surprised.
We used to play buzzword bingo when I worked in the insurance industry.
Yeah, buzzword bingo.
Oh my God, get your ducks in a row. Wears many hats.
Yeah,
touch base.
Yeah, glass
my
ceiling.
favorites. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm trying to think what else stuck out to me. I think maybe what about the word, like when they give people blanks, like letters with blanks, and you have to fill them out.
Oh, right.
So it could be TR blank blank, and someone would say one thing, another person would say another thing.
What would you say? Quick. TR blank blank.
True.
Tree.
True.
Right. Does that mean I'm a green?
That means you're a
foresty,
botanist.
and I'm a botanist. I'll take it. I'd rather be a botanist than whatever true means.
Truthful.
Yeah,
honest. I'd rather be a botanist than remotely honest.
I thought of tree when you
tree.
When you said
that's a cool.
Yeah.
But doesn't he say that people, like particularly that want to put their opinion on this person they don't know, like that person must be this way?
That's what was amazing.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, well, what is it? Here's your words, and I think these define you. Oh, no. Those are just random. They came out of me. They have nothing to do with me. That same person, okay. Well, here's Terry's words, and they look, oh, well, I can see Terry is this,
right.
and want to tell your whole life story by the same words that they say doesn't define them.
Right. It's like the pictures that you draw in front of the psychologist.
Right.
Like, this guy, I think, is ready to cut his own head off.
Right.
He's like, was it Good Will Hunting? When in the Goodwill, the scene where he starts picking apart.
It's my favorite movie.
Starts picking apart this paint by numbers. He's like, looks like you're about ready to jump out of that boat, Whitey. But yeah, you don't know. It's like best guess. I mean, the only reason I said tree was I looked TR. I was like playing Scrabble. Like I was going for the easy word, tree. But yeah, you see that a lot. Like you don't read people right. And then the expressions too is another thing I think was kind of cool, because he used Friends as an example. Like you could watch Friends without the noise on, you kind of know what's going on by the way they're looking, they're acting. They're like acting the face. That's what actors do. They hit you with the words and the gestures, and then the physiological. But the reality is, someone could be super happy. I had a roommate like this. Like Dave, how you doing? He looked like he was falling asleep because this is the best time I've ever had in my life. Yeah. He's a really quiet engineer. Wish he had a couple cocktails. Then he started once in a while. He'd like crack a little smile. Yeah. But that was his way of enjoying life. He just liked to be quiet and chilled out. He's completely content, and everyone thought he was miserable.
Yeah, I mean that goes right back to the Knox case.
Right.
What started that sentence? What were you saying though? Because it brought me somewhere.
Friends.
And I lost it.
Yeah, the facial expressions.
The facial expressions. Right. Yeah. So the way did that blow your mind?
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we like surprise face, drop jaw, like is not real. That's not how we really act when we're surprised. That's like folklore.
Right.
And so when they did this test, a study. Controlled study on that and the facial expressions we make, the amount of people that actually did that when they were surprised was almost nothing.
Yeah, low.
And then you talk about the premise of not understanding people. It's because we're using the wrong metrics.
Right.
It's just
they had done that facial recognition with little kids. This is happy, this is sad, this is mad, and the kids got it right.
In the
watching
West.
American TV, right?
Yeah.
And then they took it to a was it an indigenous type tribe that had very little. It was some kind of tribe. I don't remember, because it was a cool thing, and they got almost none of them right.
Yeah.
Right. And they were happy people. They weren't unhappy. They just don't. They don't look at it like a normal Rockwell painting when they're happy. They relate the way they relate. So there in itself makes it nearly impossible to correctly assess somebody at face value when you don't even know who they are.
Right.
You haven't probed. You don't have any real data on people. And then, that was he opens and closes with Sandra Bland, which was the lady that was from Chicago that he pulled over for in Texas. She was going on a new job, pulled her over for changing lanes, I guess. Dragged her out of the car, fully videoed. 3 days later, she's killed herself in Texas prison, Texas jail.
Both people wildly misread that situation.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I want to preface, like, this is one side of a story.
Right.
Right. But yeah, I mean, she was all upset.
Yep.
And even taking out a cigarette, he interpreted as a threat to his safety.
Right.
And you can just see, like, the whole thing escalating super quick. Whoops.
Yeah, because I guess it depends on, who you're going to believe. And I wasn't there, so I don't have an opinion. But all I saw was a video that there is a side to each of the story that he could have very well perceived he's in danger because he doesn't know her. And she could have perceived he was, aggravating and provoking her.
Right.
And maybe in neither case it was true because they didn't know each other.
Right.
They didn't know their tonality, their facial expressions. They were just going off of raw data, profiling, so to speak. Yeah, that's what this. I think that's what this book is. People don't take enough time to probe, including me, about who somebody is and what they're about, what they stand for.
Yeah.
What they're known for.
Or just be aware of that fact.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing, like when they were talking about, where's Ferguson?
For Texas?
No. Missouri, the biggest. Oh, St. Louis. They're talking about the crime in St. Louis, and they at one point they did a stop and frisk. They pulled over tons of cars, and the amount of guns that they wanted to reduce guns, and the amount that they actually pulled over, and out of like hundreds of thousands of vehicles was like 16.
Right.
And so always acting on the opposite of truth, always being skeptical is incredibly detrimental too.
Yeah.
Right. So truth is what holds a society together. I think the point is understand and just be aware that that's the case.
Right.
I don't know, man. This is tough to like grab one theme and
well, there were so many that I liked the book. By chapter.
It was entertaining.
Together, I had a hard time. It was like, it was an idea I got relatively soon. It was like, oh yeah, you better start. You got to operate under the reality that some people are going to steal from you or lie to you or misrepresent and hurt you. And there's not much you can do about it if you've done your due diligence.
Right.
And I had the investigators in my office once. The SEC was in there, and they're going through all the files. And they're combing through thousands of emails, and they pulled me into the room, and I was like, and they said, do you surveil emails to clients? And I said, oh, yeah, we'll look at them all, every one of them. It's a pain in the ass at the time. Thank God I'm not doing it anymore. And then the guy goes, do you surveil emails between each other, between financial reps? I said, we don't. And I was on the airplane, and I had just read an article about the Four Seasons, and the Four Seasons said, we don't teach people to be nice. We hire nice people. And when I told the regulator, because it was right on the tip of my tongue, I'm not this clever. I says, we don't teach people to be honest, Mr. Regulator. We hire honest people. Mm-hmm. And we go every measure possible to hire the very best available, ethical, good-founded values and beliefs, and we hire them. And sometimes we're not right. That's an acceptable loss, I think, because you can't ever be completely right.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll have no society.
That's true.
No one will leave their house.
And that's an accurate statement, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you did try and hire the right ethical people.
Yeah, we got robbed before a couple times. It happens. You don't know until later. Either.
Right.
After it's like years later, you're like, oh, that guy robbed everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think that's the kind of what I took from the book is like you don't know. And it's impossible to always be right. You'll never do anything. Like if you're looking at an opportunity or you're looking at recreating yourself and you're putting a team together, because we just talked to Carmine Gallo, who we're doing next week. We did a great interview with him. Fantastic about team building. Mm-hmm. the elements of a team building. You can't start picking the right people until you at least have a pool of honest people.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be looking over your shoulder and succeed. There's just no way to do that.
There's references, there's credit checks, there's all that stuff, but you still can have people.
Well, I mean, feel like you're going to get stabbed in the back.
Right. You can't. Yeah, you can't, because you got a vision to complete. You can't imagine that. Imagine being on you were a crew, right?
Yeah.
And you have somebody rowing the other way while you guys were rowing one way. Like they're sabotaging your scores somehow.
That's terrible. That'd be a terrible feeling.
There's people out there that do that. Not many, very few, but there are.
Or so you think.
Maybe there's more. Like Steve could be a Russian spy or something.
Possibly. One thing I heard, speaking to what you're saying about one central theme, that was kind of cool. I heard Malcolm Gladwell on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was saying with that case with the lady that she pulled him over and it escalated so quickly, is that one thing he thinks is the training was really off, like you're saying, with coming from the thing that everybody's got a gun. That training is just backwards. And then also he said, just try to inject more time. And I think that's a central theme of the book as well, is all these things, these facial expressions are an instant. And trying to read somebody and know if they're lying is if you just give it more time, if you're trying to hire somebody, go through a process and that's how you learn someone. You're not going to know them from the very first reading, their first body language. There's so many interactions going on for the first meeting that time is a big thing that should happen to help these situations.
Gathering that evidence?
Yeah.
My great mentor taught me a technique when he hired key managers. He said, always go play golf with them. Because he was a stickler for the USGA rules of golf. And he said, if you catch them cheating and they don't self-report, don't hire them.
We had a singing contest.
Right?
The singing fine. Remember we were singing when we were...
You got to self-report.
That's the integrity.
Who lost the singing contest?
I lost on my own because...
on integrity. That's what it was.
No,
but he tried to lose.
No, because Steve sings off tone and Eddie sings Disney songs. I mean, both of which are poke my eye out. I sent a message. It was my sandbox because it was back in the old studio. And I said, $10 fine if you sing during working time.
And he lost his own game.
But
that's where the rules of golf say, just so you know. You have to report on yourself. If you make a rules infraction in golf, you have to tell on yourself. That's a gentleman's game.
And then we turned our singing fine into a gentleman's game. And then if you're
singing in the shower and no one's there, you got to call yourself out for a point.
Right.
So I taught Steve that technique, and then we ended up, So, I mean, the whole point
I'm glad we did it. It was fun.
That was fun. Yeah, there's something to do. There's not much else to do.
That's what happens when the quarantine came around.
We're sequestered too, just so you know.
That's great.
The other thing that the experiment reminded me of, which we mentioned, was when they did the experiment of how the people would react to the murder happening, and a lot of people didn't have the shocked face. Was the Joe Exotic documentary we were watching?
Oh my God.
And I know most people are probably watching that because they're home binge watching, but that one guy, spoiler alert, he killed himself. I mean, they had him on camera doing it, but he was out of camera. But the guy who was in the room with him watched it happen, was on camera, and he was shocked. I think he had a wide mouth, open face. Did he? But either way, he got angry afterwards because the kid who killed himself used to joke around a lot,
right.
And he got very animated and angry, and it was very strange to watch on tape because and he was narrating as it was happening, saying, "I was very angry because I thought he was playing a joke on me, and it wasn't funny, and he wasn't moving."
Yeah.
And the fact that he was getting angry was just perfect example of this. Now looking back, is someone to get angry in that situation, you'd have no idea why if someone just killed himself. So. Yeah,
the face didn't match the situation
at all.
Though. I mean, first of all, you don't get training on seeing someone kill themselves in front of you what your face should look like. It's going to look the way the reaction is.
Yeah.
There's a noise. There's the visual part about it.
Yeah, it was crazy. But anyway, that's similar to the experiment.
We're not. I guess the point being is, integrity. You assume people have integrity. We operate under that assumption. I think that's healthy. Right? I don't think we spend enough time. My point, we don't spend enough time getting to know people. So whether it's golf or lunch or something that's important, that's going to be a long-term thing, invest a little more time.
Yep.
And don't make assumptions.
Four Agreements. That's from the Four Agreements book. Don't make assumptions.
It is?
Yeah. That's what I think.
I read that book
Pretty
yet.
sure it's one of them.
I'm not sure what that is.
The Four Agreements?
It's by... Is it by Paulo Coelho? I'm thinking of The Alchemist.
Let's be impeccable
Don
with your word,
Miguel,
right?
Impeccable with your word.
Don't make assumptions. It's four agreements you make with yourself. I haven't read it, but I was on a yoga mat once, and a lady was telling me about it.
It's a really good one. Maybe we'll do it.
Cool.
Simple one. But one more thing I was going to say. What was I about to say? I can't remember now. What were we just talking about right before you said that? The
Four agreements. That we don't spend enough time meeting people. We make assumptions about them.
Oh, yeah.
We come to, a lot of times errant conclusions about who they really are. Sometimes you're wrong about who they really are, and they're better than you really think. They're not worse. They're better. Like, there's a much better person. You were one of the people that I met as a stranger, hired relatively quickly, Eddie, and I hired you, and you were exactly what you say you were, if not more.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. That doesn't happen every
I would
day.
say that's the exception.
Yeah.
In my experience.
So that's a great point. Is like as you guys know, a lot of times I give people the benefit of the doubt, maybe too much.
But you tell your moving story real quick. Hopefully
Yeah.
this isn't going like 3 hours, but
Not at all.
that blows my mind.
No, we're at a 40-minute mark, so we're good.
All right.
So
The moving
we
story
just
with
moved.
his buddy.
So I had this is like a perfect example
I love
of
that.
who I am. This is kind of perfect because it's like that thing is like. So I needed help moving. Someone agreed. I'll try to make this story short. Someone agreed, and then the day of when they were supposed to meet me there, they didn't show up. But luckily, I had another friend nearby that was able to help me. And then a few months later, and I was texting the friend that didn't show up. I was like, "Hey, I just need to know so I could confirm with somebody else." I didn't want to ask, and I didn't want to have to I don't know if he was just not picking up his phone or what. No response. So that's worse than a no. And then my other friend, or a few months later, the same friend that stood me up asked me to move him. And I did.
And what did you say, Steve?
I said yes. And then on top of it, the funny part was that I think he forgot. He must have forgot. That's what kind of made it easier, is that he said the same thing happened to him with one of his friends, that someone stood him up and didn't even give him a response. And it was like a weird deja vu moment. But I chose to believe that he was just absent-minded. And
See, I think he's mismatched.
well, here's the thing. Here's what I was going to say. What Ty reminded me of is that's it goes to your way of life. Is I rather trust people, because if I say to that he was just a completely thing, I much rather believe and go through life thinking he had a misstep, he didn't know how to say no, and he had something else he had to do and he didn't know how to say no and didn't have the courage to say no, than rather he just lied and totally was cynical about it. And that
What do you
goes
think
to
the odds favor, just out of curiosity?
I honestly think that he definitely forgot that he said that I said the same thing to him, but when it came to the thing, I think he really just couldn't
Didn't have
do it
his
and
phone
couldn't
that
say
day
no. No, I think he had his phone. I think he really chose not to do it. And I really think he was
I'm glad you at least came to that conclusion.
oh yeah, no, that was
this guy's not your friend, newsflash.
right. But at the same time, it's I don't want to believe everybody's going to do that, or just, I mean, that's not a good example because he didn't lie. He just didn't say anything. He was kind of just a bad person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still would help, because it's just I'd rather just do the positive thing, because I don't want to go through life thinking that everybody's going to fuck me over. I'd rather be the other way around.
Ooh, a rare F-bomb.
Sorry about that, yeah.
Podcast. We're going to leave it because
right.
we'll bribe you. What do you call it? Not bribe.
Blackmail me.
Blackmail you later.
First he's Father Teresa, then he's dropping F-bombs on the podcast. You got to pick a
just wiped
side.
out all the credibility you had as a nice guy with that statement.
Communication.
Do we have any questions?
I don't. Let me see. I don't have it up.
If you do have questions, you can text us at 754-273-6069.
Quick note on this, because I feel like
I actually had a question, but
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
I have a question. How can you tell when someone's telling the truth? Do you take a lie detector test?
Well, you can't. And according to the book, there are certain things we look for. We look for a lack of eye contact.
Yeah.
We look for stumbling, but they're not necessarily indicative of lying. So I think what he says in the book, what Steve alluded to, you just got to get to know them and gather evidence.
The best people in the world at it are just slightly, he said 52%. The best people in the
CIA
world at it
or
are
DIA.
52, 54%.
Yeah.
It's just slightly better than random.
That is terrifying.
Yeah. They're not any better at it. You could sit under a palm tree and guess and do almost as good or better if you get lucky. But I've taken a lie detector test.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to take it was called truth verification. The one I took was when I got accused of drinking alcohol on a transplant waiting list. And I said, well, I hadn't been drinking, and I would have probably died if I couldn't reverse it. So I figured out how to get a lie detector test. So I went to a secure facility in Jacksonville, and the guy administered the same lie detector test they use in Guantanamo Bay. That it's new technology. It's not the polygraph. And I passed. And there's no known deceptions, and they claim 98% accuracy. But I've also heard that that's probably not the case either, because you can train yourself to do anything, right? But how do you know when someone's lying to you? There's no.
I don't know. Look at me.
Well, what if there was an algorithm, a computer algorithm that could detect when you're lying, so you could have like a beep go off, and it's 100% sure that you're lying. What would that do to the world? There's no such thing as lying. You can't lie without being caught.
Ooh, I have another thing. Sorry to cut you off, but Malcolm was on that same podcast with Joe Rogan. He was saying, because Joe brought up, what if you can read people's minds? Like, wouldn't this all come? Like, you don't have to worry about this anymore because you know what their expression meant. All these different things, and he said that would bring up a lot other problems, because, for example, like if I have a thought, my instant thought might be completely wrong, right, and then I need time to think about it and then be like, oh, Terry was right with what he said. Right. But like if you get my first initial reaction and be like, that was a dumb thing you said, then you think I'm thinking that about you, and that leads to so many other problems. So it was a really fascinating response to that.
And this is from what interview?
This was from Joe Rogan. Yeah, he was on Joe Rogan.
Well, if you had no way, if you had a 100% way to detect a lie, there'd be no need for courts or no need for it. Would change the world. When the kid in the Stanford story, and I'll close with this, the two foreign students saw the guy raping the girl, or allegedly raping the girl at the Stanford, the freshman who was drunk, and she was drunk.
Brock Turner.
Yeah, but his first reaction was to, why'd you run? That was his first reaction. Doesn't mean he's guilty. It's just what he didn't have experience with this, obviously, and it's interesting. It's just interesting that what's the right. And you don't know.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we won't get into that, but he gets into a lot about alcohol and how that manipulates it makes already a difficult thing exponentially harder.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible for two drunk people to read each other.
They call it myopia. Myopia is when you can only see things in front of you. It's when the eyeball stretches. But alcohol gives you a social myopia. You do things and you don't see far. You see
short term.
Yeah, so you have someone drinking and two people drinking that don't know each other. I mean, in this case, they were both strangers to one another, and they're also drinking. I think he has said it was impossible to assess really what happened. The girl was blacked out.
Right.
Just be nice to each other.
That's good.
Thanks,
That's
Father
good
Teresa.
Why don't you have
Father Teresa, Steve?
Why don't you write be effing nice in your own words, Steve. Good boy.
But so last note on this, because just a reminder that we did look at this through the lens of, like we're always thinking like, how do we take these and tie it to business and entrepreneurship? So I hope it didn't come across as like undermining the book. It's actually incredibly entertaining, and it's a really fun read, and I'd recommend it. It's a pretty quick read too. I'm not even looking into the camera. It's a pretty good read too. So definitely check it out. If I'm making a list of 100 books pertaining to business, this isn't on it, but it's still a great read.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely there's utility of it in business. For interviewing people, for making snap judgments to employees, to building teams. There's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, but do you feel like it's a reach to put in like a top list?
I don't know if I ever get a chance to meet the guy. I don't want to chuck him off my 100 list.
Hey, he's one of the best authors of all time. I'm saying for
he
business.
wrote Outliers.
David and Goliath.
I don't know what 100. I mean,
he wrote a lot.
It's not. It's a good book for business. It's definitely not only a business book. It's a good book for life.
Yeah,
I'd say so. It's not necessarily only a book. I'm sure he didn't design it for business, but it does have utility in business, my opinion. Next week, we had a talk with Carmine Gallo today. Awesome guy. This guy helped me with my TED Talk. And he wrote Talk Like TED. He wrote Storyteller Secrets. He wrote The Presentations, Secrets of Steve Jobs. And he just wrote 5 stars. How to Go From Good to Great. This is a book on communications. And he did a really special segment on the COVID-19 and the importance of communication now more than ever.
Yeah, it's a great interview, great book, and excited to talk about it.
Awesome.
See you next week.